how to pronounce Viktor.
In Swedish, it's pronounced as Viktor Gyökeres. Viktor Gyökeres.
Anyway, so Viktor Gyökeres, Arsenal Football Club, after what feels like a near decade of the most obvious needing of a striker ever, it looks like they finally may get one. Now, this isn't completely 100%, but it basically is guaranteed to happen, or him to go somewhere. He's no longer playing at Sporting Club de Portugal. He's already said he's not going to come to training, and the club presidents have already said that he's never going to play for them again. I don't like it when this happens, and I always feel like there's always like a bad vibe when a player comes in when he's refused to play for a club or refused to come to training, because I always see that as kind of a sample of what makes him not want to do that to you if, let's say, somehow in the future Real Madrid or Barcelona come in for him or something. Will that happen in the future? Probably not, but I guess you never know. Arsenal has needed a striker, a number 9, as much as Manchester United needs competent players. It's felt like the most obvious thing for the longest time. Aubameyang has been really the last striker they can really put any sort of responsibility on at Arsenal. And even before then, I mean, there's Olivier Giroud. I don't think he's the one really to look at. They've not really had a competent number 9 since Robin van Persie. Just look at the history of the recent number 9 shirts. You got Lacazette, you know, Lucas Perez, Lucas Podolski, Chu Young Park, Eduardo. Right now, the current number 9 is Gabriel Jesus, of course. David Ornstein, otherwise known as my dad, comes out with a bomber saying that he's finally agreed a deal of up to 73.5 million euros for Viktor Gyökeres. And Viktor himself is basically begging for this move. So with that said, let's talk about how good Viktor Gyökeres is. Comment down below, how do you think he'll do at Arsenal? Can he be the piece of the puzzle to help Arsenal win the Premier League? Of course, keep in mind there's also Madueke from Chelsea also going over there. I know he's a right winger, which feels like it's not exactly necessary because they've already got Saka there. But it makes sense because Saka has already got enough, you know, complaints about him playing too much football. So having a bit of support there and rotation in other games, I think is very much needed. But if Arsenal was to go win the Premier League, what else would have to happen? A few midfielders with Mendy and Norgard. Did he need more? I think yes. I think they need another forward player that can also help out in terms of creating and scoring goals. Rodrigo is a link for that for Real Madrid, but I don't know if he's the one really for Arsenal. For me personally, I don't think he's the answer. So comment down below your thoughts, like and subscribe, and Mazor Designs for the best football prints, all made by myself. Use code Vizeh for 15% off all items. And let's see. So the number 1 main issue with Viktor Gyökeres is that the Portuguese league has not got the strongest history of bringing in players that score goals. The most obvious one is, of course, Darwin Núñez. Let's take the numbers here. Núñez scored 26 goals in the Portuguese league in 28 games for Benfica. Of course, since he's joined Liverpool, has been incredibly inconsistent, and we can all admit now is, despite being a physical player and has got definitely the athleticism, just hasn't got the composure and, let's be honest, the intelligence and the technical ability to really be at a top level. Another one that's always been a good example of amazing in the Portuguese league, but not that good anywhere else, is Mehi Taremi. He scored 64 goals for Porto in the Portuguese league in 122 games. But again, at Inter Milan, scored just 1 goal in 26 games last season. And being a somewhat okay player, but scoring high amount of goals is a common thing. Carlos Vinicius scored 18 times for Benfica. He got a move to Tottenham Hotspur, and he scored no more than 6 times in a league campaign for any club after that, which that includes Spurs, PSV Eindhoven and Fulham. And you can maybe make a push for, in recent years, being the likes of João Felix that came from Benfica, and you could say that he's not been as successful as what you would hope to make out. So in terms of the league and how you could compare it to Premier League, it's hard. But you would say, okay, but the Champions League, he's got a hat-trick against Manchester City. Well, that is definitely very impressive. I think as a physical unit, his hold-up play as well, he loves a battle and he loves to fight against players. I saw him live playing against Burnley 2-3 years ago for Coventry City. He was someone that could make things happen on his own. You could have everyone defending at back, put the ball up to him, and he's got enough in his locker in terms of pace, in terms of physicality, in terms of strength, in terms of intelligence that he can hold at the ball and drive the team up the field all by himself. He's got that in his locker. Now the thing is, Gyökeres, he's not just a normal player. He scores goals. He's got 39 goals. But the thing is, this must be different, right? 12 of them, of course, being penalties. But even without those penalties, it's still 27 goals. It's still impressive. And the stats are on his side. In terms of the last 20 years of all the players that scored 39 goals in a league campaign, those players are only Ronaldo, Messi, Lewandowski and Luis Suarez. A pretty good combination of players to be in. But when it comes to the Premier League, you may say, well, he's somewhat of a stats padder, you may say. In terms of his games against Benfica, FC Porto, or even Braga, he's only scored 2 goals in the 6 games against those, top level teams in the league. But again, you may say the Champions League is where you should really be judged. And you can definitely see a big drop-off in terms of how he performed when there was Ruben Amorim there compared to how he performed when he left. Before Ruben Amorim left, he scored a hat-trick against Man City, which was just before Amorim left to join Man United. Scored a goal against Sturm Graz and against Lille. After that, against Arsenal, no goals. Club Brugge, no goals. RB Leipzig scored a goal, and then Dortmund, no goals either. Arsenal is a team that's known for their corners and set pieces, so you may think that with crosses in the box, because he's a big man, 6'2", that he's there to win headers. That's definitely not one of his stronger parts of his game. That's a big misconception. Just because he's tall doesn't mean that he's therefore good in the air. This prime example of a Wout Weghorst, where even though he's 6'7" or something, I think 6'5", he's not actually that good in the air. He's good at hold-up play when it comes to on his chest, but when it comes to it being near his head, he plays like he's 5'9". And it's important to highlight the fact that in terms of close touches, in terms of link-up play, he's not exactly that ideal either. First touch can leave a lot to be desired, so he's not really brilliant in tight areas. So when it comes to if Arsenal are playing against a low block, he may not be too useful because he won't really be the kind of player to really have good link-up play. It can be a focal point, but in tight areas, it could be a problem at times. His main thing is that he's a massive transitional threat. He's got incredible running power when it comes to driving the ball up the pitch and try to move the team up the pitch with him. He can do it alone almost. Just like Liverpool, they face many deep and mid blocks all the time. But when they get a chance to transition, they are absolutely devastating because of the pace they have in the attack. That's something that Arsenal has desperately missed, because last year they were putting the likes of Martin Odegaard and Merino or Havertz up top, that despite the fact that they are technical very good players, they've not got that much running power and ability there. This is one massive part of Arsenal's game that they've been missing. A proper true threat to help them in transition, which means that if you've got an actual threat up there, because Merino and Havertz, they've not got the pace to really make it count. By the time they actually get the ball and maybe try and get control of it, the opponent's team is already back into their positions. The transition is already gone. With Gyökeres, they actually will have a serious threat, therefore the opposition cannot commit as many players have the pitch in comparison to what they would already be doing. So if you're asking me about Gyökeres and how to do at Arsenal, I think he's definitely an improvement to what he wants. My main issue with him is the fact that when it comes to headers and first touches is his 2 main weaknesses, and when it comes to lower mid blocks, that'll be what he'll be up against on a weekly basis. He is someone that needs space, and that's something that Arsenal will not be facing as often as what he would do at Sporting, of course. But in the big games, he would be probably offered a lot more space in terms of on transitions. So you're asking me how do I think he would do? I think he'd be someone that could get probably 15 to 20 goals in Premier League. I think he'll be a success. That's definitely a success for Arsenal. And he is definitely better than what they currently have, and he offers something which they don't already have either. The main thing we should hope is that Arteta changes the system in a way which best suits him. And if they somehow do bring in the likes of Vizeh, that could be a massive shift in terms of opening up those kind of tight spaces to get him in behind. I think a proper technician in terms of him would be very helpful. Eze potentially on the left side, and of course Saka on the right, and Madueke as well involved. They could have something. You look at how Merino or Kai Havertz currently plays in Arsenal's system. They like to kind of hold up into space and drop deep to link up play to get Saka involved or Odegaard or whoever else, where Gyökeres just goes. And that is a clear difference here. So in terms of the opportunities that they missed last year to a lack of clinical finishing, that should be improved. And then the addition of different types of threat he would be able to offer due to his a different style of play. He's a lot more direct and he just runs at people. He runs into space. That leaves so much more variety of ways that Arsenal can break down a team. And that's so vital because it means that, for example, Saka, which usually has 2-3 players on him at all times every game because he's the main clinical threat, if Gyökeres is there, it means that there should be less players around Saka because there's much more to worry about here. And that's why if you add someone like Eze to that as well, who's also a creative threat in many other ways, they would be a much more diverse team to break teams down. So therefore, they won't be reliant on set pieces, which they've been, accused of being too reliant on the entire season, or relying too much on Saka. The one thing I found of Arsenal games is that they very, very rarely ever have any sort of like 1v1 opportunities. They try to be too cute in breaking teams down, and that's kind of where you always see Saka struggling to do it all by himself. So comment down below your thoughts. I'm all for Arsenal being in a title race. I think City have got better. I think Liverpool have got better. Chelsea, of course, they've just won the Club World Cup, but they could also be a threat in some own way. I don't think Chelsea will go on to win the league by any means, but I think they'll definitely be, more competitive than what they were last year. They'll still have their inconsistencies, yes, of course, but I think in terms of on their day, they could beat anyone, of course. Well, thank you boys for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.